The South African National Petroleum Company says it'll focus on stabilising the organisation as it charts its way into becoming a national energy champion. SANPC is a newly established state-owned entity in South Africa, formed by merging three entities: iGas, PetroSA and the Strategic Fuel Fund. Its primary goal is to enhance energy security and to reduce reliance on imported petroleum products. The Central Energy Fund held a media briefing earlier today to hand over assets and funding to operationalise SANPC. SABC News economic reporter Liabo Setho is there.
This morning, we were invited to a media briefing where the South African National Petroleum Company, a newly established company, hosted the media to give information about assets transfers and how the company, the newly established company, is going to begin working. And with me, I have the CEO of the South African National Petroleum Company, Mr. Kofi, who's going to give us an overview of what we can expect from this newly established company and some of the legacy issues that come with the three other companies that were formed together to form the SANPC. Mr. Moakhe, thank you so much for your time and welcome to SABC News. There's been a lot of questions asked about the operationalization of the SNPC, and in your media briefing and statement, you also mentioned that to start off things, the organization will have about 5 billion rand, to start operationalizing things. Can you give us some of the other more salient features of what can be expected from this new entity?
Yeah, thank you very much for that. I think I keep on reminding people that we're building a champion, and I think I tell people that we're writing a different narrative, and the narrative is that this company is going to be sleek, operational. We have started already, but we're also looking at security of supply, which is our key mandate. And our key mandate for us, you must remember that oil and gas, by its nature, it cuts across the borders, right? So SNPC will actually be looking at operating across geography in Southern Africa. So when I look at countries like Namibia, I look at countries like Mozambique, South Africa, Angola, and DRC, I look at that as a basin. Some of the countries have got gas. South Africa is the biggest consumer. And I think my view is that we need to actually start looking at building the highways, to be able to move the molecules from where they are to where they are needed. In terms of where we came from, we've got three legacy entities. They had challenges, and I think part of the big challenges that we looked at for the merger is that these companies tend to compete amongst themselves, because we're sitting with a mandate, and those mandates goes back to, apartheid days. They were meant for different environments in terms of, security of supply, in terms of managing sanctions, and we don't have those challenges any longer. So it actually made sense for us to start pulling these companies together to optimize. We're looking at efficiencies, as Chair said earlier on. We're looking at about 1.5 billion in terms of efficiencies. We're looking at growth, and we're building the company for growth. And I think don't look at this as, combining these three companies and sitting back, but actually we're getting ourselves to grow this company and to make sure that, South Africans can go to bed and sleep and know that we have security of supply.
Yeah. You have decided to go for the route of, I think it's called the lease agreement. Could you please explain to us, because I'm sure that people who are watching us will think about the challenges of the entities that are merging together and what would happen to the inherent challenges that they had individually, and how would that impact on the new entity?
Yeah. I think sometimes we also need to look beyond a single problem, right? I think SFF is Section 21 company, as Chair said earlier on. PetroSA had financial challenges. and we could not actually go the amalgamation route, right? So we went the route of lease and assign. So effectively, we take all these assets from these companies, we pulling them into SNPC. That gives us an opportunity to actually drive efficiencies to be able to optimize as well. So that model will operate, but in that lease and assign, we've got what we call options. So at any point in time, SNPC can actually buy those assets from the legacy entities. But the assets that we are leaving with the legacy entities, we're going to have to actually make sure that we operationalize them, i.e., you're talking the GTL in Mossel Bay. We're actually looking at options around partnership, but we're still going to have to do feasibility studies to make sure that when that asset comes back, we have done a proper study and we are at least clear in terms of sustainability of that asset. And as soon as they are sustainable, we're going to bring them across to SNPC. The conversation that we normally have is until those assets and those employees have been moved across to SNPC to be part of this giant that we are building, the measure is not done. So we will continue to look at that. SNPC will continue to support those legacy entities to make sure that we deal with some of the challenges that are there, and then we can move them across.
As we conclude, what happens to the staff members of the three legacy institutions, and what would be your most pressing assignment, now, where you say the first deliverable will be this, and we want to see it to fruition by this time?
Okay, I think we're going to be doing this in phases. So phase one, we have just moved 402 people from the legacy entities, 3 legacy entities, and moved them across to SNPC. We are looking at creating what we call Center of Excellence, and those functions will continue to support the legacy entities while they are like employees of SNPC. And then we will help those legacy entities to actually get out of those challenges and move across. The immediate challenges is to stabilize the organization. I think sometimes we get excited and we want to chase growth while there is a leakage behind. So we need to make sure that we close the back door. There is no leakages. And the second thing that we need to do, we need to make sure that we've got robust governance processes. Because we made mistakes in the past, right? We corrected those mistakes and we acknowledge where we made mistakes. But actually there are a lot of good things that we have done. And I think one thing that we don't do well is to talk about the good things that we do. And actually we keep on saying we need to learn to tell our own narrative. SFF actually was pretty robust and running well. iGas pretty robust and running well. There were challenges with PetroSA, and we are awake to the fact that we're going to have to deal with those challenges and make sure that we actually are writing a different narrative as we go forward. So we're not going to leave them alone. The next wave, which is a phase 2, will actually be dealing with bringing those assets that we left behind and the employees across to SNPC so that we've got one single national oil company. Because we can't have too many companies dealing with oil and gas in the country. We want to have one phase to face the external stakeholders to actually execute the mandate of this government, which most importantly, to make sure that me and you can go to bed and sleep and make sure that this country is in good hands.
Mr. Godfrey Moakhe, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for joining us.
Okay, great.
Thank you. I've been joined by Mr. Godfrey Moakhe. He's the CEO of SNPC, the South African National Petroleum Company, newly established. And he says that first in the entry is to stabilize the organization, make sure that everything runs smoothly. No doubt there'll be a lot of work as this company, gathers momentum and steam and tries to find its feet. But we'll be monitoring how they're doing. And with that, it's back to you in studio.